The Manhattan afternoon sun filtered through the massive tempered glass, bathing my luxurious office on the 68th floor in a golden hue. I, Isabella Rossi, founder and CEO of Rossi Innovations, one of America's pioneers in green technology, quietly swiveled my luxurious leather chair looking out at the glittering skyline that was slowly taking over the city. The soft ding from my computer signaled a new email, an invitation formal and elegant to an annual charity fundraising gala, of which Rossi Innovations was a platinum sponsor. I skimmed through the content, then stopped at the attached guest list. 3 names appeared with aching familiarity: Arthur Rossi, Maria Rossi, and Vincent Rossi. A faint, almost invisible smile crossed my lips. It was not a smile of joy nor of anticipation. It was the smile of someone who had gone through a storm, looking back at the fragments of the past with bitter contemplation, but also with pride. 15 years, a quarter of a lifetime. 15 years ago, these same Rossi people, the ones who had given me life, had cruelly thrown me out of the doorway of the house that had once been my home in the middle of a freezing New York winter night. My luggage at that time was only a few coins, an old suitcase containing the fragments of my youth, and the cruel accusation of my father, Arthur Rossi, still echoing sharp as a knife. Useless parasite, you have disgraced this family. Now, ironically, this useless son held the key that could decide the prosperity or decline of the business they were once proud of. The wheel of fate is unpredictable. My memory takes me back in time to a luxurious mansion in the suburbs of Long Island 15 years ago. It was a late October evening, the air was cool, and the winter was coming. The Rossi family was gathered in the large dining room where flickering candles on the table reflected the light of expensive silverware and crystal glasses. The warm and luxurious atmosphere was carefully prepared to celebrate the 30th wedding anniversary of my parents Arthur and Maria Rossi. My father Arthur, a tall man with carefully groomed gray hair, sat in the chair. He was a successful civil engineer, the owner of a prestigious construction company, a conservative patriarch who always put family reputation and material success first. Next to him was my mother Maria, a beautiful woman with a hint of sadness on her face, even though she tried to smile. My mother was gentle and resigned all her life. She only knew how to please her husband and take care of the family, rarely daring to have her own opinions. The center of attention that evening was none other than my older brother, Vincent Rossi. Vincent was 5 years older than me, handsome, elegant, and always the pride of his parents. He had just been promoted to middle manager at a prestigious investment bank on Wall Street. Throughout dinner, the praise and admiration for Vincent was endless. My father patted him on the shoulder, his voice full of pride. "Son, you are truly the hope of this family. If you continue like this, your future will be even brighter. The Rossi family business will also depend on you in the future." Vincent smiled smugly, accepting the compliments as a matter of course. As for me, Isabella at that time was only 23 years old, having just graduated with honors in environmental engineering from a prestigious university. Unlike my father and brother, who were practical and business-oriented, I had a passionate heart with ideas about renewable energy, about a green and sustainable future. I was nurturing a small startup project, a plan to build and install low-cost solar panels for low-income households and remote communities. It was my dream, my passion, something bigger than just making money for myself. Picking a moment when the air seemed to calm down, I took a deep breath and tried to present my idea to my family. I had prepared a small presentation in my head with figures analysis of the project's potential and social significance. I hoped, even if only a little, to receive support or at least a sincere advice from my father, who had a lot of business experience. Dad, Mom, Vincent. I began, my voice trembling slightly with excitement. I have a project idea that I want to share with my family. I want to start a small company specializing in solar energy solutions. I have researched it very carefully. The market potential is huge, and more importantly, it can help many people while also contributing to protecting the environment. Before I could finish, my father waved his hand away, his face showing impatience. Solar energy. Isabella, what are you talking about? It's all nonsense. Unrealistic. Do you think starting a company is as easy as going to the market? Who would pay for that, instead of daydreaming? Why don't you learn from Vincent and find a stable job in a big corporation? I've already talked to Mr. Peterson at Company X. He can arrange a position for you. His voice was cold, like a bucket of ice water poured over the fire of passion that had just ignited within me. I felt my throat tighten. Vincent, seeing that his father was not pleased, immediately seized the opportunity to show off. He smirked a smile that I always felt was somewhat fake and contemptuous. "Little sister, you are still too naive. Business is not a game. Your community projects sound good, but where do you get the money to maintain them? Or are you planning to ask money from your family to pursue this expensive hobby?" He deliberately emphasized the word ask, looking at me with a mocking look. I tried to argue. That's not it. I have a specific financial plan. I believe that this project can generate profits and develop sustainably. I just want... Enough, Isabella. My father interrupted, his voice becoming harsh. I don't want to hear any more about that utopian project. You should know your place. As a woman, your job is to find a good husband and settle down, not to chase after these frivolous things. My mother, Maria, sat silently throughout the conversation. She looked at me with sorrowful eyes, her lips pressed tightly together. I knew she understood me. Perhaps deep down she wanted to support her daughter, but her weakness and fear of her father's authority kept her from speaking up. She simply placed her hand on mine, a gentle touch, as a hopeless consolation. My parents' 30th wedding anniversary party ended in a heavy and tense atmosphere. The initial joy had completely disappeared, replaced by disappointment and sadness that invaded my young soul. I realized that in my own home, my dream was considered a burden, something to be ashamed of. The distance between me and my family, especially my father and brother, seemed to be growing larger and larger. In the days after that fateful dinner, the atmosphere in the house became even more stifling. My father barely spoke to me, and Vincent always found ways to be sarcastic whenever he had the chance. I withdrew into myself, spending most of my time in my room continuing to research and perfect my project plan as a way to escape the harsh reality. I still held on to the faint hope that one day my parents would understand and accept the path I had chosen. But the real tragedy was just beginning. About 3 weeks after the party on a Saturday morning, my father called the whole family down to the living room. His face was murderous, a far cry from his usual coldness. My mother stood beside him, her face pale, her hands clenched together. Vincent stood with his arms crossed, his expression serious, but there was a glee in his eyes that was hard to hide. Isabella. My father nearly shouted, throwing a stack of papers onto the coffee table in front of me. "Explain this to me." I picked up the stack of papers with trembling hands. They contained family bank statements and a few printed emails. My heart pounded as I read the numbers. A large sum of money, about $50,000, which my parents had planned to use for a kitchen remodel, and a small investment in my father's company, had disappeared from the family's joint savings account. The transactions had been made online to an unknown account. Father, I don't understand. I stammered, feeling a terrible unease wash over me. "You don't understand," my father roared. "What did you do with this money? Did you take it to invest in your vain project? Or did someone cheat you?" "No, I didn't do that," I cried out in panic. "I don't know anything about this." I swear Vincent spoke up now, his voice full of fake concern. "Dad, Mom, calm down. Maybe Isabella just did it by accident. She seems very stressed about that project lately. She also asks me a lot about venture capital funds, about online trading methods. Maybe she experimented a little and unfortunately..." Vincent's words were like a knife stabbing straight into my heart. He was deliberately trying to steer suspicion towards me. I remembered that a few weeks ago, in an effort to find funding for the project, I had asked Vincent about some financial terminology and how angel investors worked since he was in the finance industry. But I had never asked about how to access or use the family account. Vincent is right, isn't he, Isabella? My father glared at me, his voice growing angrier. You've been stealing family money to fuel your foolish ambitions. I've spoiled you too much. The emails that Vincent stumbled upon and showed his parents seemed to be irrefutable evidence. They were elaborately crafted exchanges that made it look like I was contacting some sort of venture capital fund, mentioning that I needed some initial capital and was willing to raise family resources. There was even a doctored bank statement that showed a small test transfer from my account to a suspicious e-wallet address just before the large sum disappeared. It was all a perfect drama, orchestrated by Vincent. Years later, I learned that Vincent had lost a lot of money in a risky cryptocurrency investment that he had kept hidden from his family. To cover the deficit and avoid being discovered by his father, he recklessly withdrew money from the family's joint account and created false evidence to blame me, his younger sister, whom he secretly envied for her intelligence and unique different ideas. He knew that my father was already prejudiced against the path I had chosen, so it was easier than ever to sow further suspicion. It wasn't me, I didn't do it. I screamed in despair, tears welling up in my eyes. Dad, you have to believe me. Mom say something I would never do, that I looked at my mother for help, but she could only cry. She looked at me with eyes of utter disappointment mixed with pain. Isabella, my child, why were you so foolish? Money can be earned back, but family honor. And you have disappointed your parents so much. Her words were like the final blow that broke me. Even my mother, the person I had always believed in and believed in me, had believed those lies. I felt completely alone, surrounded by doubt and anger. My father, Arthur Rossi, a man who valued trust and honor above all else, now looked at me as an enemy. He did not give me a chance to explain. In his eyes, I had become a thief, a disobedient son, a disgrace to the Rossi family. His rage was at its peak. Thief, traitor. He pointed at me, his voice hoarse with anger. You have destroyed my trust. You have ruined our family. I don't have a daughter like you. During that storm, no one in my family spoke up to defend me. My aunts and uncles, who occasionally visited the house, were not present that day. Even if they had been, I am not sure they would have dared to stop my father's rage. The Rossi family had always been known for Arthur's patriarchy, and his words were almost like orders. I remember an old maid, Mrs. Martha, who had taken care of me since I was little, standing in the corner of the room, her eyes looking at me with sympathy and a bit of suspicion. But she could only lower her head, not daring to say a word. The silence of those around me, the tacit approval or the fear of speaking up, made me feel more alone and hopeless than ever. It seemed like the whole world had turned against me, condemning me based on false evidence and malicious accusations. My father's anger reached its peak. He could no longer keep his cool. "Get out of this house," he shouted, pointing at the door. "I don't want to see you again. You're not my son anymore. Don't ever come back here until you do something good. Prove you're not a useless, burdensome person." His words were like knives stabbing deep into my heart, making it bleed. I stood there, unable to believe what I had just heard, being disowned by my own father and kicked out of the house. My mother, Maria, sobbed. She held my father's hand, her voice trembling. "Dad, please. She's still foolish. Please forgive her this time." "Forgive me," my father growled, pulling his hand away from my mother's. "Can you still defend him? He's done such a terrible thing. If I don't discipline him strictly, what else will he do in the future? I can't tolerate a child who steals and deceives in this house." My mother looked at me helplessly, tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't dare to disobey my father any longer. She quietly went upstairs to my room, took the old suitcase that I often used when traveling, and quickly stuffed a few clothes and some personal belongings into it. When she handed the suitcase to me, she pressed a handful of crumpled change into my hand, probably all the cash she had in her wallet at that time. "Go, Isabella," she whispered, her voice choking. "Go away for a while. When your father calms down, I'll find a way to talk things out for you. Take care of yourself." I looked at my mother, at my father, at Vincent, my brother with a half smile full of hidden meaning. My heart was broken into pieces. The pain of being wronged, the cruelty and cruelty of my loved ones made me unable to cry anymore. A numbness covered my mind. I didn't say another word. I silently picked up my suitcase and walked out the heavy oak door of the house that had once been my home. The sound of the door slamming behind me was like the end of everything. That night, New York was bitterly cold. I wandered the unfamiliar streets with no destination, no one to lean on. Tears kept falling, blending with the first snowflakes of the season that were starting to fall. I was alone, with an unspeakable grievance and an uncertain future ahead. My father's words, "useless parasite," kept piercing my mind like a vicious curse. The first few days after leaving home were the most terrifying of my life. I had nowhere to go, and I didn't have enough money to rent a decent room. I slept rough at bus stops and in hidden corners of parks, trying to keep warm with only the thinnest layers of clothing. Every morning when I woke up, despair would take over me. There were times when I thought about giving up everything. I reached out to a few old school friends, but none of them could help me in the long run. They had their own lives, their own struggles. I understood that. I started doing menial jobs to make ends meet, washing dishes in a Chinese restaurant, cleaning an office building at night, handing out flyers on the street. The meager pay was enough to buy me a few loaves of bread and a bowl of hot soup every day. The physical fatigue was nothing compared to the mental pain that was tormenting me. But even in the darkest moments, a small ray of hope still flickered inside me. I couldn't let myself fall like that. I had to live to prove that my father was wrong, that I wasn't the useless person he thought I was. That cruel accusation became a driving force, a fire that burned inside me. And then a miracle happened, or rather, it was the kindness of a stranger. One snowy afternoon, as I sat huddled on a park bench, trying to read the solar project documents that I had kept close to me, a warm voice rang out. "Are you Isabella Rossi?" I looked up. Standing before me was an older woman, her white hair tied back in a bun, her kind eyes looking at me with concern. It was Eleanor Hayes, a widow who lived alone and had been our neighbor years ago when we lived in a more modest neighborhood before my father made his fortune and moved to a mansion on Long Island. Eleanor had moved away after her husband died, and I had not seen her since. She recognized me, though I had changed a lot, haggard and gaunt. She didn't ask much about how I ended up like this. She must have heard the bad rumors about me, but she didn't seem to believe them. She just quietly invited me into her cozy little apartment, gave me a bowl of hot soup and a clean place to sleep. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly without fear or cold. The next morning, I told Eleanor my whole story, from my dreams and projects to the tragedy of being abandoned by my family. She listened patiently without judgment. When I finished, she took my hand, her eyes shining with faith. "Isabella," she said, "I always remember you as a smart, kind, strong-willed girl. I can't believe you would do such bad things. Don't give up on your dreams, my dear. These hardships will only make you stronger." Not only did Eleanor give me a roof over my head, she also gave me valuable confidence and encouragement. She had a small amount of savings saved up all her life. She decided to invest in my project. "I have no children," she said with a gentle smile. "Consider this a little capital for my adopted daughter to start a business. Don't think about profit or loss. Just do what your heart tells you to do." Eleanor's words and actions were like a medicine to revive my soul. I no longer felt alone. With that little capital, along with Eleanor's constant help in managing expenses and connecting with some of her old relationships, I started over. I rented a small old warehouse and converted it into a makeshift workshop. I designed and installed small-scale solar panels myself. At first, my customers were low-income families in the neighborhood people Eleanor knew. I installed them at very low cost, sometimes for free if I could find funding from small community foundations or local churches. The work was extremely hard. There were nights when I stayed up all night with technical drawings, trying to fix errors that arose. There were days when I was covered in grease climbing and installing solar panels under the scorching sun or pouring rain. I had to do everything myself, from engineering, finding material sources, marketing sales to customer care. Many times I encountered harsh rejection when trying to convince people of the benefits of solar energy, a concept that was quite new and unfamiliar to many people at that time. The ridicule and doubts were still there, but they no longer hurt me like before. They only made me more determined. Gradually, my efforts began to pay off. The solar systems I installed worked effectively, helping households save significantly on their electricity bills. Word of mouth spread. I began to receive larger orders from small schools and community centers. I hired a few more workers, young people with the same passion and enthusiasm. I decided to start a company, and I chose the name Rossi Innovations. I deliberately kept the last name Rossi not to cling to the past, but as a constant reminder of the pain that had passed, of the unjust accusations, and more importantly, as an affirmation that one day the name Rossi will be known not for material wealth or virtual fame, but for real contributions to society for innovation and pioneering. Rossi Innovations grew from strength to strength. We didn't stop at just small-scale solar installations. I boldly invested in research and development, looking for more advanced and efficient green technology solutions. The company expanded into other areas, such as energy storage systems, energy-saving solutions for large buildings, and consulting on the development of large-scale renewable energy projects. We attracted the attention of major investors who saw the potential and vision of Rossi Innovations. The company grew rapidly from a small workshop in an old warehouse to a reputable enterprise with hundreds of employees and offices in many cities. And I, Isabella Rossi, the girl who was kicked out of her home with nothing and an unexplainable injustice, became a self-made millionaire, a model of resilience overcoming adversity to achieve success. Eleanor was always by my side, witnessing every ups and downs. She was not only my spiritual mother, but also a wise advisor, a trusted companion. She was my real family. The melodious music of a small orchestra wafted through the luxurious ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. Crystal chandeliers sparkled over the gorgeous evening gowns and elegant tuxedos. The annual charity fundraising gala was in full swing. As one of the platinum sponsors and guest of honor, I was chatting with a few important business partners. Suddenly, I felt a familiar gaze on me from afar. I turned slightly. As predicted in the email, they had arrived. My father, Arthur Rossi, looked much older than he had 15 years ago. His hair was almost completely white. His posture was no longer as straight as before. His face was deeply lined with worry and fatigue. Next to him was my mother, Maria Rossi. She was also thinner and paler. Her eyes were sunken with a hint of sadness, but today there was also a restlessness and anxiety. And there was Vincent. He still looked handsome on the outside, but the complacency of the past had disappeared, replaced by tension and a hint of lowliness that was hard to hide. They stood in a corner of the auditorium, looking out of place and out of place. I knew why they were there. My father's construction company, Rossi & Sons, once his pride and joy, was now on the brink of bankruptcy. After years of poor management and bad investment decisions by Vincent, who'd been put in full control of the company after my father retired, the company was in debt. They came to the party not out of charity, but in the faint hope of finding a savior, some investor who could inject capital into the family business. An irony of fate. 15 years ago, they chased me away because they thought I was useless and a parasite. Now they have to beg for help from people like me. The inevitable encounter had arrived. David Chen, a notoriously difficult venture capitalist and key strategic partner of Rossi Innovations, with whom I had just had a fascinating conversation, was walking toward me. And right behind him, looking hopeful and anxious, were my father and Vincent. "Oh, Isabella, it's nice to see you here." Mr. Chen smiled warmly. "I just had a very interesting conversation with Mr. Arthur Rossi and his son Vincent. They have some business ideas they'd like to share, and I thought you might be interested as someone with the last name Rossi and a successful career in innovation." Mr. Chen had no idea about the past between me and the Rossi family. He simply thought it was an interesting coincidence of names. The moment Mr. Chen introduced himself, all three Rossi family members were stunned. My father dropped the champagne glass in his hand. The sound of glass shattering on the marble floor attracted a few curious glances. My mother raised her hand to cover her mouth, her eyes wide open, staring at me without blinking. Vincent's face was as pale as a leaf. He lowered his head, not daring to look directly at me. Silence fell. Only the music still played, but now it was discordant and discordant. For a moment, my heart stopped beating. A wave of complex, intense emotions surged through my chest. The pain of the past, the humiliation of being abandoned, the long nights of loneliness and despair, all came back to life vividly. But mixed in strangely was not the joy of revenge as I had imagined, but a little pity at seeing my parents' haggard appearance and a strange calmness. For the past 15 years, I have been working hard fighting, not waiting for this day to take revenge, but to affirm my own worth to build a life that I am proud of. And I did it. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice from shaking. I looked each person in the eye, my father, my mother, and finally Vincent. "Hi, Dad. Hi, Mom," I said, my voice flat and expressionless. "Hi, Vincent. Long time no see. You all look under the weather." My appearance was calm, professional, even cold, but still maintained a minimum of politeness. A small smile, a smile whose true meaning no one could guess, played on my lips. I was no longer the weak, vulnerable Isabella of 15 years ago. I was Isabella Rossi, CEO of Rossi Innovations, a woman who had been hardened by adversity. My father was the first to break the silence. His voice was shaky, and he stammered, Isabella, is that really you?" He took a step forward, then paused as if he couldn't believe his eyes. My mother burst into tears, sobbing. "My child, my Isabella." Mr. Chen looked at us with surprise and a little confusion. "You two know Miss Rossi?" Before I could reply, my father hurriedly spoke up, his voice filled with remorse and pleading. "Mr. Chen, this is our youngest daughter, Isabella. We had some misunderstandings in the past. Isabella, can you forgive your parents? We are family." He turned to me, his eyes pleading. "The family company is facing a lot of difficulties, Isabella. I know you are very successful now. Can you help the family a little?" His words were like another stab, but this time they didn't hurt, but only evoked a bitter irony. I looked straight into my father's eyes, my voice still strangely calm. "You once said I was useless, a parasite who could do nothing. You kicked me out of the house in the middle of a cold winter night without any mercy. Now you want a useless son like me to save the business that you were so proud of, the business that you used to despise me and my dreams. How ironic, isn't it, Dad?" I didn't mean to make a big deal out of it, but my voice was clear enough for Mr. Chen and a few people standing nearby to hear. The atmosphere around became tense and suffocating. I continued not to tell a story, but to give them, and perhaps those around them, a better understanding of what had happened. For the past 15 years, while I struggled to survive, to build everything from scratch, abandoned by my own family because of a slander, a lie everyone else lived in luxury on the foundation of that injustice. My eyes stopped at Vincent, who was still looking down his shoulders, shaking. "Do you remember what you did, Vincent? Do you remember the false evidence you created to ruin your sister's life? Vincent didn't raise his head, but I could see beads of sweat running down his temples. I turned to Mr. Chen, a polite but distant smile. Mr. Chen, sorry to bother you with this unhappy family matter. As you can see, this is my family, a family with very special traditions about trust and how to treat children. Mr. David Chen is a seasoned businessman. It didn't take him long to piece together the facts and understand the nature of the problem. The initial look of surprise on his face was quickly replaced by a serious and somewhat disappointed look. Under the pressure of the situation, under my cold gaze, and perhaps more importantly, under the threat of losing his last chance to save the company, Vincent could no longer keep his composure. He jerked his head, up his face contorted with fear and regret. I'm sorry, Isabella. Vincent stuttered, his voice almost pleading. It's my fault. It's all my fault that year. That year, I lost a large sum of money in investments. I was afraid my parents would be disappointed if they found out. So I took the family's money and blamed it on you. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Vincent's belated confession, though, lacking in the details of the elaborate setup, was enough to clear things up. My mother sobbed, almost collapsing. My father stood there, his face ashen with shock and shame. The truth he had tried to bury or would not believe had finally been exposed in its most brutal form. Mr. Arthur Rossi, the once proud and powerful man, now looked pathetic. He walked shakily forward, then suddenly knelt down in front of me. Isabella, my child, I'm sorry. He cried the tears of a man who was on the other side of life, tears of belated remorse. I was wrong. I'm a terrible father. Please, please forgive me. My mother also knelt down beside my father, holding my hand, tears streaming down her face. My child, please have mercy. We are blood relatives. I know I was wrong for not protecting you. Please give us a chance to make things right. The sight of the biological parents kneeling and begging for forgiveness from the daughter they had abandoned was truly heartbreaking. But my pain had become numb. I helped them stand up. Get up, Dad, Mom. It's all over. My voice was no longer cold, but it also lacked the warmth of family affection. Mr. Chen, after a moment of silent observation, spoke up, his voice polite but firm. Mr. and Mrs. Rossi, Mr. Vincent, I am very sorry about the situation of Rossi and Sons. However, after what I have just heard, I think our cooperation, if any, will not be possible. In business, integrity and trust are the most important factors. Good luck to you. With that, Mr. Chen nodded to me and politely left. The Rossi family's last hope had been slammed shut. Rossi and Sons, without new capital, would surely face bankruptcy proceedings. That was the price to pay for past mistakes, for Vincent's mismanagement, and for my father's blindness. Vincent stood there stunned, like a man who had lost his soul. His career, his pride, it was all about to go up in smoke. He would have to face the consequences of his selfish and cowardly actions. And me, I looked at my parents, at the brother who had harmed me. The satisfaction I had thought I would feel at this sight was absent. Instead, there was an emptiness, a strange relief. About forgiveness, I said, my voice calm. I forgave everyone a long time ago. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I needed to forgive so I could be at peace, so I could move on. I paused, looking deep into my parents' eyes. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it certainly doesn't mean things can go back to the way they were. I can't erase 15 years of pain, 15 years of struggling alone with a belated apology. As for helping, I looked straight at my father. I can give you a monthly allowance to cover your living expenses to ensure you have a stable place to live and medical care when you get old. After all, you are the ones who gave birth to me. That's the least responsibility I can do. But I insisted the Rossi family business, which you were so proud of, which you used to belittle my dreams, let it decide its own fate. I will not spend a penny to save a foundation built on lies, injustice, and mismanagement. "Vincent, you must take responsibility for what you have done." I left the party shortly after leaving the Rossi family in their own chaos, regret, and despair. I didn't look back. Stepping out the door of the Plaza Hotel, taking a deep breath of the fresh New York night air, I felt an invisible burden lifted. The darkness of the past, with its hauntings and wounds, seemed to have truly receded. I had faced it, said what needed to be said, and made my own decisions. Justice, in a way, had been served. Not through destructive revenge, but through my own brilliant success, through the truth being revealed, and by letting them face the consequences of their wrongdoings. I returned to my luxurious penthouse where Eleanor was waiting for me with a cup of warm chamomile tea. She didn't ask many questions, just quietly held me in her arms. Her warmth and unconditional love were the most solid support the true family I had. In the following days, I continued my life focusing on running Rossi Innovations, developing green technology projects that benefit the community and the planet. I found joy and meaning in my work, in the sincere relationships with friends and colleagues who stood by me throughout the difficult journey. The pain of the past has made me stronger and more resilient. Betrayal has taught me the value of trust, of self-reliance, and the importance of choosing the right people to walk with. I no longer feel bitterness or resentment. Instead, I feel peace and freedom in my soul. I still send my parents a regular allowance through a lawyer to ensure they have a minimum living, but I never see them again. That relationship, despite being blood-related, is broken beyond repair. Forgiveness is one thing, but rebuilding trust and affection is another. I look to the future, a bright and open future. I have big plans for Rossi Innovations' new dreams to fulfill. And perhaps one day, I will build a small family of my own, a home built on a foundation of true love, respect, and understanding. My life is a testament to the fact that even when crushed to the core, people can still rise from the ashes stronger and brighter. Justice does not always come from the court or the punishment of the law. Sometimes justice is the good life you build with your own hands, the peace of mind, when you have overcome adversity and found your own true happiness. Faced with the devastation and pleas of the family who once abandoned her, does forgiveness come with an unlimited responsibility to help? Or is true justice to let them bear the full consequences of their past mistakes, even if it means watching them completely fall apart? If you were Isabella, what would you do differently, or do you agree with her decision? Share your feelings and thoughts on this story.